I don't believe in God,
but I believe in music.
It's got the power,
and I'm gonna use it.
I believe in evolution,
and the world needs solutions.
I'm gonna sing a song of reason.
We need a revolution.
Right now, don't hesitate. We gotta try to change the weather before it's too late.
Okay, hello guys, here we are. It's good to see all your lovely faces, and I'll just do a little intro. All right, I just want to say, here at the Utopians, we'll be chatting regularly to YouTubers, influencers, and communicators who are free thinkers, humanists, and progressives, people who are active in helping bring about positive change in their own way. And today we are speaking to one of those people. Our second special guest, last fortnight ago, we had Godless Granny. And today we have Erin Lewis.
Welcome,
Hi, Erin.
Erin.
Thank you for having me.
Stripper come author, by the way. And I've read 2 of Erin's books and did very enjoy both of them. Oh, actually, I've read another one too, but it's on my Kindle, so I can't show you that one. Yes.
I have one of Erin's books as well, and I got it quite some time ago when it first came out, and I don't even remember the title anymore. Erin, so our first question for you is your career as a stripper is a rather unconventional one. How did you come to get into that line of business?
Just really a inherent lack of adherence to authority. I really just made a terrible employee from like just the get-go. I was always a kid in school who basically kind of just didn't really want to listen, didn't really want to get along with stuff. So once I graduated high school early, and went like right into the workforce. I was in college for a couple of months. I didn't want to do that because then of course it was more school and more people telling me what to do. And so yeah, dancing just was kind of an easy go-to, although it was certainly not meant to be a career. But I guess it sort of turned into that. It was just one of those things where, like, once I realized I could be independent and I didn't have to like rely on a boss and do all that kind of stuff.
So you were a rebel, really?
I mean, yeah, other than like a few years when I was a teenager, I pretty much kind of like faked it. I just kind of got along. I used to, like, when I would get in trouble for school, it wasn't for like acting out in class. It was more like I refused to do any homework. Like I would she would hand me the sheets and I would throw them in the garbage can on the way out the door. But I passed all my tests and I did all my work in class. And so I still got really good grades, and there wasn't really anything they could do about it. So I wasn't like, I wasn't like throwing chairs or, calling people names or nothing. It was more like just
not conforming, basically.
Yeah, it was just really not my thing. And then especially when I started to work in an office, and it was just kind of like, is this really what I'm doing? TGI Fridays, with people I'm only pretending to like on the weekends, and this is what I'm doing. I'm living from Saturday through Sunday, trying to just get through the week so that I could get back to that little piece. Like it was just never going to work for me, I don't think.
Yeah.
So I'm still terrible at it.
Did you take dance lessons as a child?
Oh no.
Oh
no. And now I have a better idea of what book you read. Because I actually write about this in a book called Think You Want to Be a Stripper. It's like a series of like short essays
that was
about
the first book, wasn't it? That was your first one.
It was my second one. It's really short. It's about 65 pages. It's like
Right.
basically like a series of essays on different aspects of stripping, at least from how I saw it. And one of the chapters is you know, I can't dance, because I really had no idea. I didn't go to any school dances. I didn't want to do that. Dancing just had very little to do with the actual job. Like, it really didn't matter. There are dancers that I know, probably myself included, although I do think that I developed some skill, like just kind of by accident. But there's plenty of dancers I know that can't dance at all, that are absolutely terrible
Yeah.
performers, that make a ton of money, probably a lot more than me. So it's the aspect of the job that just doesn't really require a lot of skill when it comes to physicality, even though people think, you got to be up on the pole and you've got to do all this stuff. And it just, it, like, the bottom line, that just doesn't really matter all that much. It's adult entertainment for a reason. It's
Yeah.
not like,
Were there
it's not
some
like
that could dance?
I'm
Were
sorry.
there some that were actually good dancers?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah.
a lot. I have a couple of friends, especially like on the pole. She went on to do like silks and some other type of I don't want to say acrobatic, but kind of things that were just
Aerial
like,
artist.
oh yeah, there were people that were so good at dancing and performing. It just isn't something that you have to do. And certainly nothing that you know what I'm saying? It's not like the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, where you're actually like striving and working really hard. It's dancing is more about taking your clothes off, to just be totally blunt.
Yeah.
One of the more well-known cases that we studied in tax class when I was in law school involved a stripper. And it was a stripper who had had a boob job and deducted that on her taxes as a work expense. And the IRS disallowed it, but the judge ruled in favor of the stripper, saying no one in their right mind would get a boob job and get their boobs this big. She obviously did this for work, and she was allowed to deduct that as a tax deduction. And so that leads me to ask a very personal question. And if this is too personal, don't answer it. But is all of your equipment natural?
No.
Okay.
No, I did not deduct it though. But absolutely, when I first learned to do taxes on my own, when I was living on my own, yeah, absolutely, I deducted everything, makeup, hair, everything I could possibly do, because obviously when you're an independent contractor, you're self-employed. I actually manage I manage a small business now. So hire a stripper as your bookkeeper. You won't be sorry. Well, maybe you might be sorry. Hire the right stripper as your bookkeeper. Yeah, no, I was absolutely told and taught to deduct all of that stuff, because that's part of your performance. So I'm not surprised. Although I guess I can see why he might be splitting hairs. They would be huge. But yeah, no, all of my equipment is not natural. So, yay, science.
Fair enough. Yeah. Nothing wrong with science.
No, it's awesome.
All right.
What inspired you to start writing?
Oh, spite.
Oh, okay.
I got really tired. So I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s. I grew up with like talk shows and stuff like that. Of course, Showgirls was huge, because I was in the Saved by the Bell era. So, as soon as she put out that movie, I was like, yeah. And it's like, oh, wow, is this what strippers are really like? It's not at all. Maybe the pushing down the stairs thing. But I got really tired of just like the tropes and the stereotypes that I was seeing, especially like on Dr. Phil, and especially seeing dancers painted as the victims, right? Like you're all victims of abuse, or there's something, you're forced into it. That's actually a common trope right now with a lot of Christian nationalists that are anti-porn, is they don't even allow for women to make the choice. They say that nobody makes this choice, which is just blatantly false. It's not a choice that everybody should make, but I got really tired of just being told like what I was and what my experiences were, and seeing that depicted. Like I said, I target Dr. Phil, but I do believe that's pretty warranted, because that's mostly what I saw on TV, was just, this sad, person. And that's not what I saw. And so that was really why I wanted to start writing. I just wanted to put my own like narrative out there. I just wanted to see something that reflected my own experiences. I didn't intend to write anything past that book. But I've always had a love of books and reading. And so I think writing kind of came naturally after that. It's kind of addicting.
Yeah. So you're inspired to do that, to explain your situation with stripping, and it's not all down and out people and people that are on drugs, and like it's not as messy as what I suppose a lot of people might kind of look at it, and you wanted to clear that up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's not all, it's really not all glitter and dollar bills. There's definitely,
Yeah.
it depends on the market you're at, or you're in. It depends on so many different things. There's a lot of ways that things can go wrong. There's a lot of predators that exist in that space,
Yeah.
and partly,
Yeah.
they're in there because of the stereotypes and the stigmas. You know what I'm saying? People
Yeah.
in an industry like that, that's considered taboo, are just easy marks for predators in that way, which was another reason. Of course, I didn't think about it until after I started writing and started like talking to people about it and stuff like that, that I realized that, dispelling the stigmas and stereotypes around sex work, all kinds of sex work, actually make it safer, because it humanizes the people that are doing it. And once you view somebody as a human being, it's a lot harder to, try to take them down.
Yeah.
You have a lot in common with the Amish, believe it or not.
That I've never heard before. Tell me more.
I have interviewed some Amish people, and they express a very similar idea to you, that they get tired of other people. The way they phrase it is stealing their stories, because you see so many things written about Amish communities and Amish people, and they're usually not written by Amish people. They're written by people who usually are talking about the tropes that we hear about Amish people.
A stereotype.
Right, the stereotypes. And so I've talked to some Amish people that write specifically or produce content specifically to try to get rid of the tropes and to try to make people realize, we're real people, and that's not the way we are.
I had an editor tell me once that stereotypes are born from ignorance, which I found really profound, because that's a lot of what I try to do. And sometimes that ignorance is very innocent. I when I do interviews like this, a lot of times people will tell me, I don't know anything about the strip club, and like apologize, or they'll ask me a question that, and coming from somebody who maybe knows about strip clubs, I might find kind of offensive. But when you realize that it's coming from a place of like innocent ignorance of people that just truly don't know anything about that realm, that's where it's nice to talk to people that are willing to listen and to understand. I would say the Amish stories probably do parallel a lot with sex work, and probably a lot of other types of lesser known communities.
Yeah, because everything is nuanced, isn't it? Like there is nuance to everything, and that is a problem.
Unless you're on the internet, yes.
Yeah.
It's strictly black and white.
Yeah. Sorry, Gigi.
That's okay. As an author, one of the things that you do is to strip away the myths, and that requires a certain level of skepticism. How did you come into skepticism? Or have you always been a skeptic?
It's funny. I just read a book, and now, of course, I can't remember what it was called, but it talked about how difficult it is to remember what you used to believe and what you used to think. And so, of course, when I go on like atheist shows or gets asked that, questions like this, I get a lot of, you know, well, what did you used to think? Um, if I think about it right now, just off the top of my head, I said, of course, I've always been a skeptic. I've always had doubts. I've always been questioning. But I'm not sure that's really true. I was raised like kind of squishy Catholic, kind of let go of a lot of that dogma really early on. It was not pressed upon me as a kid. It was really like, God is good, be a good person, you won't go to hell. Like that was pretty much bottom line, my religious teachings. So I always believed in a higher power. Now, like I said, if you're asking me now at this age, I would say, well, of course I always doubted, but I'm not sure that I did. What was the catalyst for me to actually start like researching, or was to start like reading and to actually start kind of like digging into those beliefs, was a child in my family that died of cancer. And you know, there was a lot of prayers, there was a lot of like kind of, you know, a lot of prayers really, and myself included. And then when he passed, it was kind of like, you know, oh, this is God's plan, he's an angel. And it was like, well, what kind of an asshole would do this? You know, I'm starting to now have an issue with like the morality and the ethics of this higher power we're supposed to be worshiping. And that was where I really, my first thing was to investigate if there really is a soul, right? Is there an afterlife? Where did the essence of this child go? And I read a book actually called The Science of the Soul, which talks about scientists in history actually trying to prove that there's a soul. They talked about trying to weigh a body as it was dying, you know, before and after they died, to see if the soul actually had a physical weight. And there was a little bit of like quantum physics, which I'm not even going to pretend like I completely grasped. But I came away from it going, this doesn't look like it's a thing. And that kind of unraveled from there. I started to read more science books. One's about ghosts. I was actually a ghost hunter for about 15 years. I talk about that in Expose Yourself, and what it was like to kind of dismantle those beliefs. Like you start to debunk each little experience that you have. You know, oh my gosh, those orbs I caught on the pictures are not orbs. They're, you know, it's dust. It's dust. I'm looking at dirt in the air. That's what I'm doing. And thinking that it's like people. And, you know, after a while you start to understand, then you understand how the brain works and how we're really good at fooling ourselves. So the skepticism sort of came, I guess, maybe from grief and from an honest desire to just sort of have a better understanding, as opposed to just saying, hey, there's this big like higher power energy source that's like super great, but he, you know, kills kids with cancer and doesn't even do it quickly. He takes 6 years, you know. So yeah, I guess it just sort of happened gradually. Which one is that? Is that
The Demon Haunted
yes,
World? Like you're talking about being a skeptic. That's the book.
Yes,
that
I would say
totally,
actually. So my favorite manual to skepticism is actually The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And in my book, Expose Yourself, I don't know where it is, but in my book, Expose Yourself, in the back, there's actually a bibliography of pretty much the timeline of my journey to being a skeptic and an atheist, dealing with anxiety, learning how our brains work and all that kind of stuff. But Expose Yourself, I list in the back, including Carl Sagan's book, which, by the way, a customer told me, I was reading it while I was dancing. And I told a customer that I was reading it, and he told me it was a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Carl Sagan's going to lead me into all sorts of, well, he meant it in a negative way, that it was going to lead me into all sorts of bad things.
Right. But I just find that the height of hypocrisy.
Yeah.
You know, if he's there to enjoy the gifts that you have to offer, I think he's already at the bottom of that slippery slope.
I know, so much hypocrisy. It's ridiculous, isn't it, really? Yeah. And it was a slippery slope, wasn't it? Because it got you into skepticism and just asking questions. And
definitely. And I think what killed me the most is that Sagan, especially if you're going to compare him to like the Four Horsemen, with the exception of Daniel Dennett, you know, he's very kind and he's very sweet. He's not like he's not a dick. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have if I was trying to lead somebody down that path, I wouldn't have them start with Hitchens or Harris. I'd be like,
Yeah.
let's go with
Yeah.
somebody else, somebody a little nicer.
Yeah.
Like Dennett, actually, Daniel Dennett was one of my favorites because he didn't quite have that vitriol, which I think I needed at first when I was like, because I felt fooled when I stopped believing in God. I felt like I'd been duped, almost like when I found out, I know everybody makes this comparison, but for reals, when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real, right? I was like, well, why are you lying to me? Like, you're supposed to love me. Like, this is kind of fucked up. But with God, it's an even bigger fuck up because that means, there's like this whole thing, heaven and hell, and you have all these like consequences, and you have this weird, this whole plan thing and this whole benevolence, but it doesn't actually jive with like what's going on in the world. So it just, I felt really duped. So I think that like Harris and some of that more angry, atheist, type deal coming out, I think that's important. I think it's cathartic. But then, moving down the line, I think a softer approach is a little, it's a little more palatable.
Yeah. So you don't scare people away.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to come off as a dick either.
Yeah.
You're not going to help
Yeah.
anybody no matter what you're trying to get across to them if you're being a jerk.
Yeah.
I know that I definitely, when I first got online, I was absolutely a jerk. I reveled in it. It was fun to make fun of that kind of stuff. I feel much differently now. Occasionally I still will. I certainly will in my own like personal groups, but like to the greater like online community, I'm not as comfortable just like being so much of a jerk about it.
Yeah.
Does your sexuality hinder you from being taken seriously by people?
I guess I've always thought so. But once again, the longer and more exposed I am to more people and people are to me, I'm not sure. I'm wondering if that was just maybe something that I perceived. Because like when I go to conventions or like when I'm in public, I don't have a lot of people really treat me that way. I guess I would have, people are generally very respectful. I mean, I get hit on and stuff like that. And I definitely there's a few people on the internet that will, assume that I'm stupid, but I guess I just stopped taking that personally.
We have a question from Mark Caesar who asks, when you became an atheist, did you have a deep feeling that you had lost something meaningful?
No, I don't think I felt like I lost anything more. I think if I felt like I lost anything, it might have been like time, like how much time did I spend really worrying about this thing in the sky? And how much time did I focus on what was going to happen after I died? Because I think if anything, I gained that realization that like, this is it. And I better make the most of it because one day I'm just going to be nothing. So, no, I didn't feel like I lost anything. I did actually kind of feel that when I stopped believing in ghosts. That was when it really drove home that there was like no afterlife. Because I always looked at the hunt for ghosts as proof of the afterlife, whether there's a God or not. The idea that we still go on, and losing that, I think I did feel like I lost something. I felt like that comfort of thinking that my consciousness would somehow go on. I might get to like scare people in the middle of the night or something.
I have a cousin who is an atheist, non-religious, but believes in ghosts. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, atheist doesn't mean anything other than that. It means nothing else. There are atheist flat earthers. There are atheists that believe in Bigfoot. You don't have to be a skeptic to be an atheist. You just don't have to believe in gods.
Yeah.
Do you have kids?
I do have one kid. Yeah. Yeah. He's 19.
Okay. And has he read your books?
No. No. Because there's a lot of like sexualization of me in there. It's
Mhm.
not something he's going to be interested
Yeah.
in. I don't think it's something he'd want to read about my dancing, and that's cool. He knows about them. He's very supportive of my writing. When it comes to my fiction, he's read my zombie story. I think he's read a couple of short stories. And he's actually given me plenty of ideas for fiction stuff. But like my latest book is about a succubus, a bisexual succubus. So there's like sexual situations and stuff in there that I'm thinking he's probably not gonna want to know came out of mom's head.
Yeah. And plus, you do kind of speak about things which I suppose are kind of connected to your background as a stripper. Like you bring that into it a lot. So there's probably some truth sneaking into your fiction. Yeah.
Definitely definitely inspired by true events.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's actually very, very supportive. It took him a minute to get there, but very supportive.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate to have the kid that I.
Yeah.
And that leads me into the question, you've written both fiction and nonfiction. Do you have a preference?
I think nonfiction is easier. I'm still contributing to Free Inquiry, which is the Center for Inquiry's Humanist magazine. I contribute articles to them sometimes. I've written for FFRF, Free Thought newsletter. So like articles like that, that kind of nonfiction is fairly easy. It's sort of like, I don't know, I guess it's like doing an interview, right? You're basically answering questions. So it's like it's the whole thing, the whole narrative is pretty much in your head, except you get to go back and like narrate it, edit it and make it concise and all that stuff. Fiction is fun, but for me, I think it's a little more challenging. I guess like recreational wise, fiction is more like just fun. It certainly doesn't feel like work. But more challenging for sure.
Do you write as a full-time career now?
Oh, no. I manage a office for a small business. So basically work out in somebody's home and do like light bookkeeping and things like that. So that's like my real job, my day job. Writing is pretty much just for fun at this point. But of course, hoping that could change one day.
Yeah, you would love to do that full time. Wouldn't that be an absolute joy? The same as me with music, I suppose. It would be great to do that full time, but reality bites. You have to make a living, but you keep your passion there and you keep doing it purely out of love.
For sure.
Yeah.
Who else has been a mentor or an inspiration for you?
Oh God, I don't even know. Tons and tons and tons of people. When it comes to writing, the contributing editor to Expose Yourself is a lady named Judy Saint. She is somebody that really brought me into the free thought community. She's actually, by the way, on Facebook as the Pleasant Atheist. But she was a contributing editor and pretty much came up with the idea for Expose Yourself. She is also my Freedom from Religion Foundation chapter president, which I'm a board member now. She's really been my mentor as far as being in the atheist and the free thought community. Somebody I really wouldn't be her without. When it comes to fiction, my co-author, Armin Rosamilia, my co-author of Stripper Noir, it's about a stripper serial killer. When it comes to fiction and like the horror, crime, thriller community, he's kind of been my guy as far as holding my hand. He found me weirdly on Amazon with my memoirs, and we've kind of been friends ever since. So those two people personally are probably who I'm like, those are like my real mentors, muses, inspiration.
Personal mentors. Yeah.
For real. When it comes to like fiction writing, I mean, Stephen King, Clive Barker, you know, you name it, Lois Duncan when I was a little kid. Now, of course, I can't think of anybody. Brian Keene, who I got to meet, which was really cool. Writes a lot about zombies. Prolific horror writer. Nonfiction. Big fan of Stephen Pinker, actually. Which is funny because when I met him briefly, we actually talked about Stephen King. You know what? Tons of people in the free thought community. Seth Andrews has been a huge help. Andrew Slidell, formerly of Freedom from Religion Foundation, now with Americans United. Hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah. There's lots out there. Yeah, I get it. I guess for me, like if I was to pick one, I would still have to say Carl Sagan. And like not as someone personal, obviously, that I know, but I mean, like that book just changed my life.
I gotta say that was a real big one for me. That was a really, really big one for me.
Yeah. He's special. The way he used to speak, he did that. He addressed Congress back in, I think, 1980 about climate change, and just the way he spoke was so eloquent and just so genuine. Just a special guy. Imagine if someone like that was president.
You know what? I don't even want to try to imagine it because it is so far from reality.
I know.
Like, it's like imagining I had $1 billion. Like I don't even want to go there.
What's the point? It's not going to happen. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
We have another question from Mark Caesar. He asks, Aaron, do you feel that having been a stripper, it's hard to separate that from the rest of your life? As in writing your books, you've made that now a core tenet of the books.
I mean, when it comes to like life experience and like life lessons, like that's a lot of where my experience and things come from, and especially when I'm writing, and even when it comes to fiction, if I'm imagining a scenario or a scene in a book and I'm trying to describe it or I'm trying to describe the feelings, then I'm gonna pull naturally from my experience that way. So yeah, it is hard to separate that because it can definitely kind of be my go-to, because I don't want to write inauthentically. Like I don't really have any male main characters at this point, because as silly as it seems, I was a little reluctant to write from a male point of view, because I didn't want it to sound like it's a chick trying to write like a guy.
How long ago did you get out of the performance industry, and what led you to leave the industry?
I formally retired in 2019. That was when I stopped working like weekly. And then back in 2021, 2022, the owner of the club that I worked at, basically my home club in town, he offered me a feature spot. So I came back to the club for a weekend as a feature entertainer. So they did like flyers. I had like set dates and set show times. I was able to like sell books. I got to use the feature dressing room, which was really cool. Got to act like a snot for a minute. And I did that twice in 2022 and twice in 2023. And it looks like October of 2023 was my last stage show.
Okay. And what led you out of that career?
Wrinkles and cellulite,
mm-hmm.
arthritis, slip disc. For real, stripping like that is just truly it's the epitome of a dead end job. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's going there as a feature was more than I could have asked for. It was really, I'm really proud of the fact that was how I was able to exit. But yeah, basically I just, you age out of the industry. It just happens,
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I can just be an actress and then just like move into like more appropriate parts. No, when you're, I think the last few years that I was actually dancing like weekly, you know, I think I was 36 for like at least 5 or 6 years. You know, at
Yeah.
some point,
Yeah.
they're like, "Hey, aren't you like getting older?" I'm like, "Yeah, did you hear my knees?"
Yeah. Yeah. It happens.
It does. It does.
Anyway, what have we got next, Gigi? Oh,
Go ahead.
yeah. Look, something in one of your books, and it keeps sticking in my mind, is the story that you told about the kid at school who was overly um, speaking sexually about girls and having sex with girls and blah blah blah, and it turned out that he was actually gay. Did that how did that affect you? Like, I mean, it's just really sad that he couldn't be open and just, you know, be upfront about who he was.
Yeah, it was
So,
like a gut punch. It was, I would say, like, ideologically, that was a huge turning point in my life.
yeah,
You know, because it was in my typing class, and he was sitting like in the little space in front of me, and he used to turn around, and yeah, he would just say these like vulgar
yeah,
things
yeah,
that were just like way over the top, way over the top. And it was like, dude, I, you know, loved a dirty joke and all that stuff, but like this was like, wow. And then he killed himself. And he killed himself because he, you know, he left a note, and he was gay, and he didn't want to come out to his family, and he didn't want to be ostracized. And it was, you know, at the time when I was listening to him in class, it was like, this guy's a jerk, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
And then when I found out why, it was like, yeah, it was absolutely life changing.
mm,
I grew up in Orange County, so like late 80s, mid 80s. Um, you know, AIDS was a thing. It was common to joke about, particularly gay men, right? Because for whatever reason, that's far more offensive than anything else.
yeah,
Um, and it was very dehumanizing, right? You made fun of them. It was like, oh, they got AIDS. Well, of course they did. You know, they were gay.
mm,
That's what
yeah,
happens
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
gay people. And
mm,
I didn't really think, you know, I didn't really. It is, it, you know, it's like funny. It was always a joke.
mm,
Um, and so I guess I definitely grew up with the idea that gay people were wrong or icky. Turns out I'm bisexual, by the way. Um, joke was on me, but
yeah,
when that happened, it really it absolutely changed the way I viewed, because you're looking at a, you know, even as a child, I'm looking at another child who was not free to be himself, didn't feel like he
mm,
was. And I yeah, absolutely changed the way that I viewed all of that. So, and
yeah,
it's absolutely
yeah,
still affects the way that I view that entire community now. Is
yep,
that there's not one, that no kid should ever feel like they have to do that ever.
no. And he had a religious family or background.
I believe so. I don't remember
Yeah,
much. It was, so I grew up in Orange County up until I was like 10. And then my mom and I moved up to the foothills, so a really, really tiny town. So, I mean, everybody I knew was, you know, Christian of some flavor or sort, or
yeah,
on the spectrum of there somewhere. I don't know exactly how religious his family was. I would have to go back and ask and actually research that. I
mm.
do know that he committed suicide because he was worried about coming out to his family.
Yes, yeah, that's
But
very
you don't have
sad.
to be religious to be, you know, a bigot.
Yeah,
Which was more difficult for your family to accept, your career as a stripper or your skepticism?
Ooh, probably my liberalism. Is the word. uh, um, I don't think the stripping thing. I think they just sort of got like desensitized to it.
Mhm.
Um, because I started doing it when I was 18 and I didn't hide it for very long. So it was kind of like, what are you going to do? I think the skepticism really pissed him off. I do. My siblings grew up a lot. So I'm the last of 6 kids, but I'm 9 to 14 years younger than my 5 siblings. So they had a more fundamental Catholic background. God played a much bigger role in their lives than it did in mine. I think by the time I came around, they like baptized me. Like I didn't go to communion. I didn't do any of that. So I did a different experience from them. And I think it was just, I think that was kind of shocking to like reject that part of my upbringing. So, but the politics is what finally like kind of broke the whole thing. So.
Are they Republicans?
Maybe.
I have one of those in my family too, a staunch Republican.
Yeah, I have a lot. When it became antagonistic is when it was really a problem. And that may have actually been inflamed by the fact that I came out as atheist, and especially when I first came out as atheist and when I started speaking about it and writing about it, I wasn't always nice. I wasn't gentle. I was definitely leaning more towards the Harris and the Hitchens side as opposed to the Dennett and the Sagan side. I was kind of a dick about it. So I think that probably inflamed tensions when it came to the politics and stuff, especially when the orange one who shall not be named came into the picture. I think that's when it just kind of blew up after that.
We have a comment and a question from Mark Caesar. First, the comment. He says, Aaron, I love the scene you painted with one of the strippers you worked with abusing no-dos and having a time with that.
Yeah, I was actually just telling somebody the story the other day. Because it's funny, you always assume it's illicit drugs, right? Not the stuff that truckers are taking on the long haul. But yeah, she was one of the very first people I worked with, and quite interesting.
Yeah, I've taken no dose actually.
Like it's only caffeine, but I tell you what, man,
I know,
you can definitely overdo it. I told her I was tired one night, and she literally she's like, here, and it was like, I don't know, 5 or 6. I was like, how do you not die? How do you take that and not die?
A super shot of caffeine, because I do deliveries. That's part of my job. And some days you're just really tired, if I'm traveling like a decent distance, maybe a couple of hours, and it's like, I just need something because I'm going to fall asleep here. And the no-dos have come in very handy on a couple of occasions. So I can totally relate to that.
And Mark Caesar asks, has it been an eye-opener for many people to know that you're a stripper and still a normal person?
I mean, I don't know that I am a normal person. We could probably have a whole nother show about what is normal.
True.
Yeah, I would say sometimes every once in a while, if especially when people have misconceptions of what strippers are, I think definitely, that's kind of surprising, that I go grocery shopping or do whatever normal people do.
Did you come across, I don't know, did we ask this question? I'm not sure. Did you come across other atheists or critical thinkers in the stripping world? Like what is the general mentality, I guess, of the people that you worked with? Or were they religious or?
Not necessarily religious. There were plenty of girls that came from religious backgrounds. Surprise.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like spirituality, I would say, especially towards the latter part. So a lot of belief in ghosts. When I wrote the book, when I wrote Expose Yourself and that came out, I actually had somebody who still hates me today. She was insisting that the dressing room was haunted, and me being kind of a jerk, was like no, and laid out why it wasn't, and what basically debunked her, just kind of pissed on her whole parade, and she was not happy about it.
Yeah.
Like I said, pretty sure she still hates me.
Yeah.
So I would say not a lot of skepticism. I'm not sure that, we're definitely not dealing with anybody that's like super fundamentally religious. I think if there were any girls that were like that, they probably struggled a lot with dancing. Definitely had more conversations with customers along those lines. Knew a lot of both skeptic and atheist customers, but also, the belief in God or just a higher power or spirituality is really strong, just in general.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
definitely a lot of that, but more of that like squishy side. And I think that's part of what made me kind of soften up a little bit too, is that it's like, people can believe in things that, I may think are silly. But if they're not necessarily causing harm, why am I trying to pull the rug out from under them? Like that poor girl, like the fact that she thought somebody, a ghost was slamming her off her door, and it wasn't just the air conditioner, it was totally the air conditioner.
Yeah.
But I mean, does that really hurt anything?
No.
As opposed to say,
Mm.
the girl who's relying on astrology or tarot cards or some shit and like judging her life by that, and like freaking out because Mars is going into like retrograde or something, and that's actually causing her like mental distress. At that point, then it's like, hey, maybe we should inject a little bit of skepticism here, so that you're not like having a panic attack over, what Miss Cleo said on the infomercial.
Yeah. All of these things are kind of harmless, like even religion. If it's a personal thing, as soon as you, like you just put it, start to run your life by it, that's when it becomes an issue, isn't it?
Or other people's lives, like what we're seeing
Yeah.
obviously right now. Not to delve into politics, but when you start trying to force other people to conform to, that kind of magical thinking, that's when we have problems with it. Is when we're legislating with it, or when it's causing problems in relationships, or things like that. Obviously, the relationship with God is not a great framework or role model for any type of relationship. If somebody's threatening
No.
to burn you forever,
Yeah.
that's manipulative behavior.
Yeah. It's based on fear. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I do think there's a spectrum, and I think there's a point where magical thinking, no matter what it is, crosses over into harm.
Yeah.
We have a really good question from Ghana. Have you ever stripped for a celebrity or a high-profile person?
Donald Trump's nephew turned me down for lap dances in Reno when I was like 21.
Dang.
I danced for the bus driver of Deftones.
That's
the
cool.
keyboardist of Smash Mouth owes me $20 for a sack of weed. No, not really. Not really. I danced for somebody who swore to God he was not Kevin Smith, but I think he was Kevin Smith. No, I haven't really. A lot of times, especially like when I worked in Vegas, if celebrities would come into the club, I actually generally avoided them, mostly because they were already getting mobbed. And depending on the celebrity, sometimes they would just think they were getting stuff for free anyway. So it was like, I would kind of like let the other girls kind of fangirl and like freak out over that, while I would go to customers that actually like wanted to spend money,
Makes sense.
I mean, now I have a lot less stories to tell, and like my answer to that question is not as interesting. My bad.
Well,
No
that
worries.
leads right into Mark Caesar's question, which is, who did you find to be the best patrons? Now he asks atheists or believers, but I wouldn't even limit it to that. Is there a particular type of patron that you knew would spend better?
Oh man. I actually write a little bit about this in Expose Yourself also, because a lot of that has to do with misconceptions and making a lot of assumptions about people without having a lot of limited knowledge, right? So like there was a time where I would judge guys on their shoes, because some chick told me, you look for their shoes. If they have really nice shoes, they're going to spend a lot of money. That's not necessarily true. Some of my best customers were blue collar workers, a guy that ripped me off was a lawyer that had a whole lot of money. Why he got a kick out of ripping me off for like $60, I don't know. So I
Weird.
think sometimes it was hard to tell, like who would spend money. And once I stopped trying to fit people in that box, I actually probably made a lot more money, because I stopped avoiding people, you know, that I thought were lowbrow or didn't have any money. You know, you kind of talk to people and you see where it goes. I would say the people that I enjoyed dancing the most for were people that I had developed like a bit of a rapport with, that we would talk and actually kind of built like a friendship or a connection there. You know, because those are repeat customers, and that's an enjoyable experience. And you know, I'm probably a pretty good actor as far as like, you know, faking having a good time, but when you're actually having a good time, you know, that really kind of spurs the entertainment. It makes it more of an authentic experience, all the way around. So that naturally is going to make people want to spend more money.
I had a question and I lost it.
Yes. So I was going to ask something.
Go ahead.
So religion, or I guess spirituality in general, was a catalyst for me starting to question things. Would that be the same for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think I just wanted to know for sure. I guess I was tired of like the guessing, you know, the wondering.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know like what, like for real proof, you know. I think there was delineation between like magical and like pretend time, you know, where, you know, there's this being watching over you, or, you know, you pray to them and they make things happen, you know. And then you have this like scientific side, which was always still a big part of my life, right? Where, you know, you're interested in nature, you see how we learn things, you look at, you know, medical advancements. That's why I can't move my forehead. You know, and those things are proven, by science and by the scientific method, and you know, those things are like tangible, things that we can see. And yet there's this whole other realm where people are pretty much guessing, and it's a lot of assumptions and that kind of stuff. And so I think there came a point where those two things just didn't seem like they were meshing, and I wanted to see if there was any actual like proof, if there was anything really, you
Yeah.
know, any connection that could say that there really is somebody out there, or some meaning or whatever. And you know, for me the answer was no. And once God fell away, then I was like, well, what about the afterlife? Because, you know what I'm saying, I want to be the ghost that's, you know, shaking the bed, you know, flicking the light switch, and, you know, doing all that stuff. And
Yeah.
it sucks that I don't get to do that.
I remember
Yeah,
I remember what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you if anyone came to feel kind of privileged, you know, like you danced for me last time, so when I come into the club, you should pay attention to me.
Oh, definitely. But that boils down to that kind of connection. You know, a lot of, I guess one of the misconceptions about adult entertainment and really sex work, too, especially when you're looking at a one-on-one kind of connection. I'm not sure if this is so much true over the internet, because I just literally don't have experience in that realm. But you know, when you're meeting people face to face and you're spending time with them, you are building kind of a connection there. But I would say it was almost on the flip side, because when I saw somebody walk in the door the Tuesday night and, you know, I need to make my rent or my mortgage, you know, I'm the one coming up to him hoping he wants to spend time with me again. But there was occasionally where you would have people, you know, where they didn't have a lot of money and they were like regulars or something, and they would come in and they would expect you to spend a lot of time with them, just built on that rapport. And that, of course, you know, enters into kind of a crappy scenario where you're like, well, this is ultimately a transactional situation. You know, I'm not here, I actually have to pay to be here. So, you know, and a lot of times guys, most of the times guys would be understanding, where you could come up and say, hey, how you doing? I gotta go. If we're not, you know, if we're not going to do any dances, then I'm gonna have to move on. And a lot of guys were pretty understanding. But yeah, occasionally you would have people that would assume that those people are guys that would maybe build up more of a connection than what you actually have.
Yeah. So some guys didn't get it. Like the situation is, it's kind of your job. So that is the connection, and that's as far as it goes, really.
It is, and that borderlines, that can run the spectrum from anywhere to just being kind of sad, because girls will take advantage of that, or it gets to the point where it can be kind of scary, where you have people that have built
the question came
stalkers or something like that, like stalking or something to that point. Could get it a bit like that. Yeah, right.
I asked the question based on my own experience as a waitress in a truck stop. And there was a regular customer that would come in and order a 36-cent cup of coffee and leave $1. But he expected things for that $1 that I was not willing to give him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common with bartenders and women, probably more often than not women in the service industry that way, where, and I would actually tend to guess that it might even be worse for people that weren't in my position, because I was self-employed. I'm not necessarily, unless I'm like way over the top, I'm not going to get in trouble for being rude to somebody. I'm not going to lose my paycheck. I'm not going to get fired. I think that women, waitresses or other women in that kind of profession are probably have it a lot worse than a dancer who can just, if I ignored somebody and walked away from them, like, no, I'm not going to, nobody's going to, like, I'm well within my right and boundaries to do that. If you're a waitress and you are paid to serve somebody, what do you do?
Yeah.
You're a bartender. You can't just ignore somebody. You have to serve them. So no, I would say definitely had it much easier in that respect.
Yeah.
Mark Caesar says he's now saving up to buy some better shoes.
Yeah, fair enough. But the shoe thing's not real, mate. So look, but even just serving in a cafe or whatever you were saying, Gigi, I mean, customers can cross the line.
Oh, yeah.
And just get to the point where it's rude. I mean, we work in a business as well. My wife serves in a shop, and sometimes you get customers coming in there that just treat her like a servant, literally. Most customers are okay, but every now and then you'll get that. And it's just wrong. It's crossing the line. I think you have the right to say something in that situation and stand
Aaron,
up.
we're getting close to the end of our time, but we definitely want to know what you have coming up in the future. Do you have more books in the pipeline?
Actually, I have submitted, and I'm going to start poking my publisher about how he feels about the sequel to South of Heaven.
That was my personal favorite, by the way. It's so colorful. It's such a good read. It really is.
I'm hoping we'll have the sequel, fairly shortly. Hell awaits for my Slayer fans out there. Yes, that's the reference. It's about a stripper who doesn't think she's an atheist. She doesn't think she's going to get to heaven, but she ends up going to heaven, and it turns out it's terrible. So she spends most of the time kind of being a pain in the ass, trying to get kicked out of heaven. So I'm hoping that we'll hear pretty shortly about when we can expect that out. I'm working on another project actually with a new publisher, which is just kind of beginning to take shape. And I'm not quite sure exactly where that's going to take me. Occasionally, like I said, I'm still putting out articles. But that's about it. I'm because I'm on the board now of my chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I've been fairly active with them, but that's not something I usually put out all over the place because it's just a thing I do.
Yeah, you're an activist. You're out there doing stuff.
Yeah. I mean, reluctantly, it just sort of like, that sort of like fell into my lap. Really, I blame Judy. but yeah, kind of once I found a place where I felt like I could help, even if it's just a little bit and locally, then that's what I do. So kind of do some tabling events. Actually, we tabled at Pride in Sacramento this year, which was really, really,
Nice.
really cool. Yeah.
That's great. I love the activism. That's getting out there like that. I guess that's what this whole thing is about, is speaking to people that are active and putting out good ideas, out there. And everybody here does that. So, which is why we interviewed you last week, Gigi. Sorry, a couple of weeks ago. We're doing Erin Lewis today, because you are out there and you're putting out, to me, what is like, I suppose, essentially just a better way of thinking, based on reason and logic and all of those things. So, yeah, I mean, that's why we're chatting to you today, because you are ultimately that.
Do you know who the next guest on Utopians is going to be, Art?
I'm not sure. I've built up a little bit of a relationship with Aaron Ra, because I've been doing music for his channel and he's used a couple of bits and pieces. So I am going to ask him down the track a little bit, but I don't know. I'd like to approach people like Matt Dillahunty and actually Godless Engineer, who's a friend.
I can get you Godless Engineer. I have a very good relationship with him.
Yeah. So yeah, people like that, I guess, pretty soon. And I essentially would like to just keep talking to people from this, can I say, free thought community, I suppose, humanists, I mean, they're all general terms, but essentially those kind of people that are putting out those kind of ideas. So yeah, no one definite at the moment, but
sounds good.
Maybe Godless Engineer could be next.
Okay, very good.
Like yeah. So I guess that's been an hour, and it's been absolutely great talking to Erin. She's a friend of the channel, and getting a bit of an insight into her life. So yeah, I appreciate you coming along and having a chat. And let's look forward to the next one. And thanks to all you guys, actually.
You're welcome.
Even Ganna sitting in the background there. Do you have any questions?
Nope. Yeah, I think we're good to go.
All right. Good on you guys. Thanks, Erin. And thanks, people in the chat. And we'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks. If not, then soon after that. Okay. And we'll play our little tune. Okay. I'll just watch our tempo from speeding up too. I feel as though we might be speeding up just a bit. 1, 2, 3, 4.